beeped at me. All right, cool. And awesome. All right, well, and Elliot left. That's all right. He'll be back. All right, friends. Well, thank you so much for joining today. My name is Jay Wilson. I'm the host here at Datacrew. And today we have Andrea joining us to talk to us about MagicETL. It occurs to me I should ask you what your title is and let you introduce yourself. So why don't we start there?
Sure, yeah. So I am a product manager at Domo. I'm aligned with the data transform products, kind of the headliner being MagicETL.
And you actually, when I first met you, we were both TCs at Domo. So you didn't start as a product manager. Where were your origins?
Yeah, so I started in consulting in the trenches with Jay, and kind of moved into a more SME type role in which I was kind of focused on data pipelines in general. And that is where I became very entrenched and enmeshed with MagicETL. Became kind of a subject matter expert there, maybe the world's biggest fan. And so when this role became available for PM for Magic, it just felt like an obvious natural fit. So moved over here about 4 months ago.
Wicked. And even before you became a TC, you were working with Domo. I'm sure it's on your LinkedIn resume, but we won't say titles just for now. But you were at another company that was using Magic. And I mean, kind of thinking through everything like Magic 1, MySQL, Redshift, Adrenaline data flows, the current state of Magic 2. If you could think about some, right, first, I know some people on this channel have been using Domo for several years now. What would you say are some big, I'm getting straight into interview questions and specifically ones I didn't prep you on, so like take your time. But like, what would you say are some like transitions or changes in the way we think or approach ETL over the years, or even as you think about like, okay, this piece might be better for that, or that piece might be better for that? Has any of that guidance that you kind of have outside of that you just give people, has that changed over time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has shifted both as data needs have progressed and also as tooling has improved. Previously back at, my old company, I would write a query in Teradata, and then pull the several 100,000 rows carefully into Excel, hoping it didn't crash in between, and then load that to a BI tool like Domo, and then visualize that data. Like the whole process has become much more automated and much more robust as far as data movement, data size. So I think that real guidance has changed as far as thinking through some of these bigger data use cases, and then also things like governance. I think the conversation has really changed. It used to very much be like, I need to keep complete control of this. I will deliver end reports to users, and now, especially Domo is like facilitating more discovery, more end user involvement. Even so far as some business users being able to use Magic to do their own data transformations.
Yeah, that piece about like transforming your data offsite and then just pushing that final report into Domo really resonates with me. I know in the teams that I work with, a lot of them, they love Snowflake. You'll pry it out of their cold dead hands. And, I look at some of their connectors and I just look at the SQL queries they're writing and I'm like, oh my God, you have a CTE in here and a join within more joins. Obviously, our dream of dreams is just like, all right, just send your simple query into Domo and then do all of your ETL in Magic or whatever tooling. I guess for those types of teams, and it sounds like that's where you were initially, what kind of made you transition to actually embracing Domo as that ETL layer? Or as that ETL tool? I mean, because clearly you would have had the proficiency in other tools. Is it actually better, faster, stronger? What do you think? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously the answer is yes, but
I have always been about self-service and democratization of data well before it was cool. I used to make people very mad because I would create data products that could be used and used for exploration. And people would be like, no, you should not be enabling your end user to do that. They need to be able to just take this specific number. And so I think that, so when I moved from the company I was at to Domo, part of the reason I did that was because I saw that Domo was the tool that facilitated data democratization in a way that I wanted to be a part of. And so there was never really any process of buy-in. It was more like finding the right spot and the right culture for me to support how I wanted to think about data.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to double click on the double click. I just said it. Oh, gross. I wanted to drill in. I wanted to dive deep. Oh God, I wanted to take a second to talk about that data democratization, and maybe open it up to the floor a little bit, guys. When you think about, and all of you are in various stages of your journey with Domo, when you think about data democratization, what does that mean in the context of what we're doing right now? What is a feature in Domo that makes it really possible to make it more broadly available to my users? And where are some sticking points, would you say, in terms of democratization? And I don't even know what that means. Like, what, data discovery? What does that, first, Andrea, what does that mean to you, high level, and then everybody else, your input?
So to me, that means being able to get people the right access, and not only the right access to data, but the right access to facilitate their own curiosity and their own, basically their own data journey, their own ability to answer questions and things like that without holding it behind a gate, an artificial gate.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so guys, with that as the premise, like being able to fuel curiosity without having gates, but still governance. I think as you guys, for the audience, what do you think? How does Domo allow or facilitate the data democratization, and where are some sticking points that we're still running into today? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, go, in no specific order.
Should I go first?
Yes, Alexis, please go first.
I try not to. I think that one of the ways that Domo really helps with the democratization of data is with the MagicETL tool, because people who understand the logic of coding and understand the logic of what needs to happen to the data, actually understand the business logic. They can use that knowledge to create what they need to create. Like when I started out, I had basic familiarization with SQL, but like didn't, I couldn't just sit down to a blank page and build a thing, right? And but I understood the business data to an extent that the IT teams could not come close to understanding, and converting requirements and testing and all of these things just required so many iterations that you would be working with IT for 6 months before you had a result. Or I could sit down with Domo and have it done that day.
Right.
I mean, that difference was just mind-boggling when that came to be.
So basically, ETL, your ability to use drag and drop ETL allows you to like meet user requirements or needs a little bit faster than more technical people who might have savvier SQL chops, but maybe not as close to the business in terms of understanding requirements.
Yeah, mind-bogglingly faster. And the process that I came up with for myself was, which is still a sticker on my computer, is solve one problem at a time. And that's how I approached MagicETL when I was learning. Is I was like, okay, I have this data set. What is the first thing I need to, doesn't even actually matter the order, but like, let's find something I need to do. I need to map this to that, or I need to split this cell, or I need to do this math. So then find the tile that does the thing, do the thing, look at the result. What do I need to do next? And then all of a sudden you have something that is sustainable. You don't have to, you're at that point, you're going from Excel macros to you never have to touch it again.
I think sticking on that vein of ETL, are there other areas of are there other tools within Domo, ETL tools or otherwise, that help facilitate that discovery or ease of use? I mean, obviously a lot of the Domo platform's easy, but I guess rest of class, rest of team, what are you guys thinking in terms of just kind of seeding this conversation around data democratization?
Oh, our big thing was that we've got a ton of stuff in the accounting department that's built on spreadsheets that take forever and obviously cannot handle more than 1 million or so rows. And we've got one of our data sets is 500 million rows. And the fact that we were able to work with them, people who know Excel very well, a lot of that knowledge transferred directly to Domo. XLOOKUP is a join, and formulas are formulas, no matter what they are. Getting stuff done super fast, going from a spreadsheet with macros that would take 24 hours to run, literally, to something that's running in less than half an hour, has just opened up incredible vistas for exploration that weren't there before. Before it was just a matter of, we got to get this done and then we'll walk away because we can't do anything else. And now it's like, I've got so much time, I can explore and learn, get better insights. So it's been a huge game changer.
Everybody remember when your computer became a brick? You're like, I'm going to walk away from this paperweight right now and go get a coffee.
I think it's interesting, Jim, that you mentioned, how easy it is to transition from Excel into Domo, and I think I share that viewpoint. I think it's the other side of the team, the other side of the fence, all of the SQL developers who are being pulled into Magic, being like, over my dead body, drag and drop ETL. I write SQL for a reason. We have someone in the community who we spent probably 6 months badgering about using MySQL data flows, and we're like, dude, you can just do this in Magic. And then he finally tried it, and it was like, oh, it's so much easier. And then now Domo's going the opposite direction of having more of the SQL familiar tooling in Magic to kind of meet that audience. So thank you for that introduction, guys. Andrea, I'm going to turn it over to you. What's the latest and greatest? What are you excited about? What do we talk about at Domopalooza? What's real? What's vaporware?
Sure. So I do my best, and I promise you I will always do my best to be very transparent and to not show you vaporware. Everything I showed you on the main stage at Domopalooza is either available in some type of beta or is GA. The exception, so the Magic on Snowflake stuff is in a very limited beta. So that one is a kind of a different type of experience right now. But everything else that we talked about is available. If we go based on the audience cheers that I heard, so I guess one of the things that we want to look at is this join tile.
Yes.
So one thing that I do want to say about the join tile is that it will be changing, the UX of it will be changing a little bit. I'm working with some designers right now, as we've had some customers using it in ways that are a little bit that are not in their own best interest. So we want to prevent people from doing things that are not in their own best interest. That being said, anybody who is familiar with SQL and has been using Magic is like notoriously frustrated with this this previous dichotomy of, okay, you select your tables, you select your join type, and then you have to select your matching columns, and that is your join. There's a lot more flexibility now that you're able to write your own join expression. Jay, you kind of asked me to come up with some examples. I did this in my own instance because I don't think I have access to the community instance. So if you want to give me access to that instance, I can recreate my examples there so you guys can play with them. But basically, the use case that I am most interested in personally for this tile is the ability to write the ranged join. So in this example, I have a couple different data sets. I have houses, renters. I'm looking for to pull out records where the districts match, where the renters' rent requirements are met, and where their bedroom requirements are met. And with this join expression now, I can write the range joins with the between to get the right amount of rent. I can write these inequalities to give me anything that has more than their minimum bedroom requirement. Like the ability to write all this in a single thing without having to create some chain of filters. And, I mean, you all know how it goes when you're trying to create a work around the join thing in
Can
Domo.
you open that up in the formula editor or whatever? Okay.
Yep, totally. Yeah, so just anything that you would
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, anything you would write after in a SQL statement after you write on, that's what you find here. Anything that you would write after that on keyword.
Mm-hmm. What do we think, guys? Does that meet the requirements? So can you wrap? Could you do can you do formulas as well? So like if the year of the date is less than or equal to 2019. I mean, I see that you have access to the beast mode function or mode functions.
Yep. So yeah, you can put like the filter, like the formula filter like functions there. Yeah.
Nice.
I love how straightforward it is.
That's pretty cool. And you said you can do like as well?
Mm-hmm.
Is this written down anywhere?
So it's kind of
parentheses.
Sorry, what policy?
Like and ors and like, I don't know if parentheses would be a thing. It looks so good.
Yeah, you can do basically anything that you could do in a formula or in an on clause you can do here. As far as whether or not it's written down, so I did update the knowledge base article. I don't think it's updated in the knowledge base yet because it's in beta. But it is also kind of self-documented. So if you want to know whether or not you can do something, you can search for it in here.
Oh, gross.
So
is a function the same as a join? Is a join clause a function? Like or between?
I don't know.
Case is obviously a function, but the between clause that's a clause. I don't know if those are the same thing. Well, I don't know. I don't want to get into semantics, but to me that's
just ignore this label here. Just don't pay attention to that label. I don't know whether or not we would want to have like multiple different menus that are like, well, this is specifically this thing. I think that what you should read this
matter.
Yeah, I feel like what you should read this menu as is like the words that you can use in your join.
Bob says that they are expressions, not functions.
There you go.
Can you use this to create a cross join?
Yes.
Cartesian product?
Yes. So that is why we are actually working on some enhancements to the UI, because it is very possible for you to just leave this completely blank, leave those two things blank, and create the Cartesian. And so there are people who are accidentally leaving both options 2 and 3 blank and creating the Cartesian. In the previous version of Magic, or not the previous version of Magic, but in the previous version of this tile, you were forced to set the columns. We purposefully removed that requirement because there are legitimate cases for creating Cartesians or cross joins. And so we removed that artificial requirement, but it has led to some confusion for people. So we're just crisping up the UI to make it so that it's very clear that if that's what you're doing, that is what you're doing, so that you're not ending up with these unintended results in your data flow.
We could still use the workaround that we've been using for that, the 1 = 1.
Yeah, you can.
But so if you made it required, like, does anybody think it would be a major issue to have it required to fill in some sort of join?
Yeah, like a true false 1 = 1, like
Because that workaround's fine. We've been doing it for years.
Yeah,
And that's less dangerous than everybody, than newbies being able to totally screw it up without knowing why, because then you're going to lose passion.
yeah, what we're doing here, though, what we will be doing in the new UI for this tile is there will be basically a button that says, I want this to be a cross join. And then otherwise, you'll be filling in the columns or whatever.
Oh, so
it'll be like more dummy proof. Yeah.
Is it possible to have a fill in my join columns in 2 as well as provide a parameter in 3?
Yeah, so you can do multiple join conditions. So you could say like ID equals ID, and then you're adding in this expression.
Ooh.
You can do multiple equals and an expression. There's not multiple expressions because you can just write the and too.
Oh man, dude, I don't love that.
It's
one or the other. Well, because I can imagine a world where if I didn't ask you that question, I wouldn't know the answer, and I would expect one or the other to work. Maybe I'm the only one. Am I the only one thinking that?
I could see somebody getting confused by their own logic, especially. Like, I mean, I try to break stuff, so I would probably try to do both and see what happens. But I could also see in the mistake scenario where somebody does an inner join and then they do that second one, not realizing the implications of the initial inner join, and then thinking that it's missing results and then wrapping themselves around the axle. You know?
Well, yeah. I mean,
I think time it's their problem, but
right, because 1 is required. 2, I would think you would toggle between choosing add a formula or add your own expression or use the buttons. But I would think not both. Anyway, this is not the time to tell you how great or terrible the thing is. What else is coming down the? Well, I guess
great.
rest of world. Are there any other? Alexi asks, what about regex comparison? I'm sure that's covered in the or the other functions that we just talked about having.
Yeah. Pretty much whatever you could do in the formula, you can do here.
Yeah.
So if you want to do like, I think it's R-like.
What? Yeah. I have not seen. Oh. Okay. R-like. I didn't know that one. Okay. Moving on.
Cool. And so I can put this stuff. I made some more examples of ways that you might want to use it, but I can put that in the community forum once I have access.
That'd be rad. Oh, by the way, is this in beta? What is the state of this?
This is in beta. Anyone can have it. It is going to
be like literally anyone, or you have to be like jump through hoops to get into the beta program?
You have to be in the beta program. Sorry, anyone who's in the beta program can use the beta.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a closed beta or a limited beta.
How soon are we going live?
I want to get the new UI out there and get some testing on, like get some feedback on it before I go into GA with this. So we have people working on the new UI now for this tile. And so once I can get that out there in people's hands, then we can talk about a GA, probably a few weeks or a month after that.
Super cool.
Try not to leave things in beta forever if I can help it.
Heart hugs. Love that. Thanks.
All right. So the other thing I just want to touch on super quickly, because it was the other thing that people were like really excited about, and it just honestly just goes to addressing a long-term pain, is this ability to share a data flow with just this modal instead of tracking down all the constituent data sets and sharing them individually. So again, this is also in kind of an open beta where anyone in the beta program can get it. And the only caveat to me, and it's something that is not the biggest priority for me to fix amid all of the other things that I want to do, but the only caveat is it will send an email. If you choose to send emails out, it will send an email for each shared data set.
Ooh, but yeah, I get you.
So we're
So before
piggybacking
they-
off. Yeah, so that's why we've defaulted to it being unchecked. That's why we're trying to be super transparent when you check it, how many emails will be sent, so that nobody ends up spamming people when they don't want to.
Yeah.
And it's just because we're piggybacking off of something, off of our sharing capabilities as they exist in Domo, and we haven't developed a new way to do this.
So question, under the covers, is the UI functionally making 3 share resources or 3 share data set requests? So there's no, is there an API for shared data flow?
No.
All the logic is handled in the UI.
Yeah.
Ooh. Andrea.
I can keep this out of your instance, Jay. You can just keep going and finding all your data sets to share. That's fine.
What if there was an API for that?
Yeah, no, totally. I think that, so to me, this feature was to staunch the bleeding in my mind.
Right.
Having been in the weeds working in this tool like the rest of you, this was such a pain point, right?
Yeah.
So being able to do this saves so much time, has already saved me a ton of time.
Yeah.
So this is the first iteration.
When you think about like an environment that has a ton of PDP, right? Just because I have a data set shared with me doesn't mean I have the ability to run the data flow or edit the data flow, right? Unless I have that. Are there any plans to kind of integrate those types of notifications into the UX, UI?
Yeah, that has been something that we've been thinking about, whether or not the person who you're sharing it with can actually run the data flow if they don't have the all rows policy. So yeah, we can definitely think through that a little bit more. But as it stands now, this is what we have available.
This is super cool.
Let's see.
Any questions? Sorry, just real quick. Any questions from the community or feedback, thoughts on this feature other than how amazing it is? Okay, moving on.
Cool. So SQL tile, there's not a lot to demo here per se, but I do know that you have a few questions about it, and maybe I can talk through some of the things that I know you want to know about it, as far as kind of like SQL tile under the covers. So this is in a pretty limited beta right now. I'm getting ready to roll it out to the next wave of people who want it. So if you want it, reach out to me. We can talk about it. I want to make sure that as we're rolling it out, it's a good experience for people and that we are not just putting a bunch of people in a state where they have a bug that we just haven't found yet or something like that. So it is a limited beta right now. Things to know about this. So I talked to the engineering director who, the team built this tile. And he said basically all of the MagicETL actions compile down to a few core actions at runtime, and the SQL tile is the same.
Oh, wow.
Basically, in his words, we basically taught Magic SQL. So the performance should be equivalent to the individual tiles, and any supported volumes or complexity would be comparable to how it is in Magic as a whole. One caveat is that it's easy to create a Cartesian or a cross join in SQL, which would definitely impact performance. Whereas previously you have to kind of deliberately do that. Now it's easier. So that is a possibility.
And guys, the reason why Andrea's asking this question is I'd asked her, well, how does it actually work under the covers, right? If anybody has used the Python scripting tiles, you've experienced that Python scripting tiles are abysmally slow. And well, I shouldn't use judgment. They're just really slow. And the reason why that happens is because when you run that Python scripting tile, even when you're doing a preview, it has to spin up a Python environment, send your data to that Python environment. The Python environment does the thing, and then it has to send it back into the Magic environment. And that experience is obviously a lot slower than just working in Jupyter Notebooks where you don't send data through different environments at a preview phase. And so here, the fact that your SQL query gets reduced or transformed into magic means that it doesn't have to spin up an Adrenaline instance or send the data to Adrenaline or anything along those lines. It can just do all of the transformation on the data in place. But I think one thing to really hear is that although it looks like SQL, it's not actually running in a SQL database. And
Right.
so all of the caveats we understand, like joins and group bys and rank and window functions, those are all going to be slower than a true database, but it will still feel faster than running it in MySQL because it's happening in Magic. I hope that
Exactly.
distinction makes sense. But this is really cool. Do you have any? Right. Obviously, you can only run what has been implemented. Are all of the functions that exist in the functions and expressions that exist in the other formula tiles? Do they all?
Yeah.
They all work?
Yeah, so I will make it more explicit in the documentation, but for now you can think of the documentation as far as like what functions work in this as being what's in the group by tile formula, which is a superset of the formula tile plus the aggregate functions. So
Wait, say what you just said again.
yeah, so in the group by tile you have in the formula in the group by tile you have more aggregate style functions than you have in the formula. Like if you try to, I don't know, if you try to sum something or whatever,
Yeah.
You can do all that in the SQL tile. So you can think of this as kind of your more complete list of what's available. And we're also, I think we added a few, I don't know exactly which ones we added, I can find out, but I think we added a few more things from like MySQL and Redshift that were like, oh, this would be nice to have. I think those work in SQL, and I'll make sure that those get documented. We
They
tried
work
to,
in SQL, but not the group by or the join or the formula.
right, yeah, they're implemented in the SQL.
Are they like deep under the covers? Are they running in different places? Why would you have different?
I think they're just not surfaced in the other tiles. I'm sure we could surface them.
Visible, but not. Sorry,
Yeah.
they're not visible, but they do work.
That's my guess.
Okay.
Is that they're just not listed there.
Mm-hmm.
We made it so that it should accept, like it should, that ability to open a SQL data flow as a magic now should, most of them should work with very minimal changes. We support backticks and double quotes. It might be that function names are a little bit different or that the parameter order is a little bit different. So you might still need to do a little bit of checking of how the SQL statement works in Magic. But I mean, things like early on in the alpha, like you'll remember, we used to not be able to use positional referencing in the group by, now you can. So just things like that, we've like little annoyances we've tried to fix.
Wait, some people might not be aware of what you just said. You just described a new feature, which was the ability.
Yeah, so previously in the SQL tile, you had to enter like quarter name or whatever, you know, like in order to say what columns you were grouping by. I'm supremely lazy and I literally never want to do that. So being able to just reference the positional.
I don't know why, but for some reason I really hate it when people do that group by 1, 2, 3. I just, when I see that, I'm like, this is terrible.
Well, Jay, I don't know what to tell you.
Wait. But I thought you said that I can take an Adrenaline data flow or any SQL data flow or just Adrenaline and press a button to open it in Magic.
Oh.
Not everyone knows about that.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know about that.
So let's see.
And it would be so cool to not have to copy and paste each of the blocks in a SQL query, but I'm guessing
right.
No. But
is that
they are the big instance.
Yeah, let me see. I have to log in 2 different instances.
Oh my gosh, Ryan's about to eat his heart out and be so sad he missed this. Like, Ryan, we can convert all of your ETLs.
Yeah. So let's see. Yeah, so there's this option, edit as MagicETL, that allows you click it and it opens
Get out!
this. Yeah.
What?
So, and you
So
can
that's
either
each of the
choose to.
blocks? That's each of what would have been the stupid blocks you have to click in and out. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so it has all your transforms, and you might have to go in and adjust some things in order to make it run how you want it, but we've tried to, yeah.
How does that handle ETLs that either have the DD, is it DDL? Where
Yeah,
you've got,
it'll
like,
fail.
functions? Okay.
You'll have to
Like,
remove that stuff.
straight up fail or just
It should throw an error, just saying that syntax is not supported. It does support CTEs, or common table expressions, like with. It supports non-recursive or two-level self-joining. It doesn't support the recursive CTEs that have the indented output.
bummer.
And it currently doesn't support analytic or window functions, but that is coming.
Extra bummer.
Well, I know, but it was like, okay, we either delay
Yeah.
this for a while, or we get this out here and we work on analytic functions. It is on my near-term roadmap, so it's like coming, I promise. It's not like 2 years out or something.
Okay, wait. There's a ton of stuff that just got said, so I just want to dive through that really slowly. Jorge asked, does it support CTEs? And by it, I assume you mean the
SQL tile.
SQL tile in Magic, and you said it does support CTEs. And CTEs, for those who don't know, one, Google it, but also its ability to have a subquery defined at the top of your function that you can then call
So yeah, it looks like
in your join clause or whatever in the main body of your query. Whose background is on? Jim, I think that's you. Thank you. So, Andrea, CTEs where are they supported in Domo+ETL? Because I think CTEs actually have very, very limited support in the actual SQL engines.
Yeah, I think they're in MySQL. I think you can write a CTE in MySQL today. I'm actually not sure if they're in Redshift in our.
I could be wrong. I don't think CTs are supported in MySQL.
Really?
Unless you upgraded from 5, was it 5.6?
It might be backward then. It might be that they're supported in Redshift and not in MySQL.
That sounds true. And they're also not supported in Adrenaline, correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Right. Okay, so yeah, I mean, guys, this is a pretty non-trivial unlock. For those of you who use them, common table expressions is the acronym. But this is a pretty big unlock. And then what we were also discussing, my question was, in MySQL, you have the ability to implement cursor functions or procedures. They're actually called procedures that allow you to basically define a function that gets applied to your code or in your select statement. And that ability to create that stored procedure is something that a lot of the SQL DBAs would really love, but we're hearing from Andre, doesn't really exist in this Magic conversion, and so those would fail.
Yep.
And I suspect a large part of that is because there is no functionality in Magic at the moment for implementing your own functions. But kind of on that thread, Andre, are there any plans to integrate access to Code Engine?
Nothing specific on the roadmap right now. It is something that I have thought about. We might get partway there with the ability to reference universal models outside of Magic.
Mm-hmm.
So to the AI model referencing that you can do, I imagine a world in which, like, AI aside, you can just write like a function or something and then reference it from within Magic. That's definitely something that we're working on.
Yeah, it would be super slick, right? Because I know Domo has their plans for Code Engine, but for me personally, I'm like, if I want to write a block of code that does something cool, I would love to be able to access that any place I can do ETL. So I have a function that does fuzzy matching, for example. I would love to be able to reference that in my DDX brick. I want to access that in Python. I want to access that in MagicETL. I want to access that in an Adrenaline data flow. Just be able to send my rows of data to that function, have it do its magic, and spit it back to me. I can appreciate that depending on what I'm doing in that brick, it might impact, ETL performance, but I would love to not have to define my fuzzy ETL logic in 5-7 different places.
Yeah.
So that would be my argument for the thing, but that's really cool. Bob asked earlier if he can do a cross apply on a string split in a SQL tile. Cross apply being the Cartesian product, I think those are functionally the same thing. And we did say yes, you can do a string split, and you can do all of the functions that you can call. So regex, string split, all of those we can do. So I think the answer to your question is yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. This is rad. Have you done any benchmarking to see? I guess the performance gains would be the same, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's just comparable to classic Magic.
Mm-hmm.
So much better than MySQL, much better than Redshift. And
Most
we
of
will
the time. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and behind the scenes, we'll be continuing to tune how things run, and making modifications for common things that we see coming up. So hopefully it'll improve slightly over time, but it should be just classic Magic out of the box as far as performance goes.
So more or less, there's really no reason to use MySQL anymore unless you desperately have to have stored procedures.
Yes, that's our aim.
And then once you have Code Engine, then I don't need stored procedures.
And once we have analytic functions, you don't need Redshift.
I love it. I love it. This is amazing. Cool. Any other questions about what we've seen here so far, guys? I know we're kind of getting to that almost 9:30 point. I'm gonna stop relying on Andrea at 9:30 so that, or I guess 10:30. I don't know time. At 9:30 so she can go on with her life, but obviously we'll have time to discuss and shoot the breeze until 10 is what I'm thinking. 10 LA, because I'm in LA right now. Anyway, cool. Any other cool new things that were announced, hinted?
Yeah, so we have UPSERT. This is, yeah. So this is in a somewhat limited beta, but broader than the SQL tile at the moment. We have quite a few people on it at this point. And basically, this should do away with your need to ever write a recursive data flow. Like, we got part of the way there with partitioning. This should be the rest of the way there.
Yeah.
Basically, it allows you to identify a key that should be used to deduplicate your data when you feed new data through a Magic data flow.
Mm-hmm.
So getting kind of a little bit into the nitty-gritty, the partitioning is based on logical keys that are stored in our vault layer, kind of our longer term storage data layer. They are what are referenced in this subset processing here, in this data selection, etc. UPSERT is basically it is an append function that is deduplicated during indexing at the adrenaline layer. So that's why if you are trying to use an UPSERT dataset as an input to a data flow, you can't really use the data selection options, because those are operating on versions that are in Vault, not on this indexed deduplicated version that's in Adrenaline.
Wait, pause. I think I just heard you say I can't use UPSERT enabled data sets in downstream ETL.
No, you can't use it you can't use it with the data selection options. So these things here, where you would identify new batches or filter by a certain batch, these are not available in a downstream data flow after an UPSERT data set.
But I can use an UPSERT enabled data set in ETL.
Yeah.
Magic, Redshift, MySQL, or just?
Yeah, it should work just fine. Yep. So, like in this example.
Wait, but the idea of like doing ETL in a batch doesn't make. Well, okay. I'll have to think about that longer, but I'm okay with that. I don't see a problem here. Does anybody else see a problem? I see no problems here.
Shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I think it's basically making a data set of record for that particular set of data, right? So that what you do downstream should be a reflection of that anyway. So there shouldn't be a reason to have to upsert after. So I think it makes sense. Is that the logic, Andrea?
I'm not quite sure that I followed. So
Me neither.
I'm
sorry.
So the reason that I mentioned the data selection piece is that I kind of got ahead of myself probably. One of the first questions that I've been getting from people who've enabled UPSERT is, hey, how come I can't use this in conjunction with data selection? And it's that difference between like data selection operating on the Vault versions versus the UPSERT data set is an indexed, deduplicated representation of a data set, or a data set of record, as you said, at the adrenaline layer.
Yeah. When you okay, one of the challenges people have had in the past is like they define upsert on the scheme of their data set, but their data that they uploaded or the data that they're running through MagicETL, maybe they're using the wrong upsert key column and they have duplicate values. How is that handled in ETL right now?
It fails.
The ETL fails?
Yeah, you can't reference a data set that has duplicate values in it. So I actually was like beating my head against the wall last night because I didn't realize I had duplicate values in my key column when I was faking this dummy data set, right?
Yeah.
And so I was getting an error. I'm like, why is it failing? Why does it say paper jam when there is no paper jam?
But you don't have to go to engineering to get your data set restored like you used to have to.
Right.
Okay.
So I can just
run the data flow or incrementally run the data flow until it works. But there's no, like the data set itself is not compromised.
Yeah.
Ooh, wait, but if I have an UPSERT enabled data set that I'm using to erroneously accumulate history, or maybe it's a customer's data set, and every day, you know, I'm upserting customers in the last, well, just new customers. If I run my data flow and it doesn't execute because I have an invalid upsert key, so customer ABC appears twice in my new data. When I run the data flow again, will the old data still be there?
Yeah.
Okay, so it just
will
doesn't
not have indexed. Yeah.
It just will not have indexed. So it just basically keep adding new data upload IDs until it can index?
It just won't even complete. Like, it will not have taken your new data into account. It will just fail. The data flow will fail if you have a duplicate upsert key defined.
Okay. It'll just fail, but the old data will still be fine. That's all I care about. Okay, cool.
Yep. As far as performance goes, though, so it's interesting deciding when you want to use upsert versus when you just want to do a full replace, because if you're updating more than like 75% of your rows with an upsert key on a regular basis, that's a case in which the overhead for that deduplication and indexing is probably higher than you just doing a full replace. Also, it does evaluate every row that comes through. So maybe a more ideal pattern would be to feed in only changed rows. Because like you see here, so in this data set here that I updated, I made some changes. I marked these states as changed. This has 221 rows. Most of these rows did not change, just those 3 did, but it's still evaluated and output into my output data set, all 221. It just like replaced each row with the matching row that I input into my data set. So like, yes, it did update the 3. Like if I go find this, like you'll see it updated it to this changed, but it also took the time to update all 221 rows, regardless of if they had changes or not. So you want to think through your design pattern there, like how much data are you feeding through your data flow on an ongoing basis? You no longer have to do the recursion where you feed the entire output all the way back in and run through the whole output, you know, using your deduplication logic and then write out the whole output. But you do want to think about how much you're bringing through and how much you're replacing in any given run.
I think this is definitely the case, folks, where having some understanding of classic dimensional modeling really helps, right? Because to Andrea's point, like there's no reason to push through rows that haven't changed. So ideally, you would just subset what's your input data set?
What do you mean?
In your ETL, you have that input data set, that web form.
Oh, yeah.
So ideally, your input data set, you would just filter it to the rows that changed. And if your data was originating from a database or an ERP system, usually it would have a last modified date column. And so you would just say, only give me the rows that were modified since the last time I ran my ETL, which would have been just the 3 rows that Andrea just changed. There's no reason to process, to her point, 221 rows, just process the rows that were modified. And that's how we get snappier and snappier with these ETLs. I think that's
yeah, exactly.
Cool.
So I know that you only have like maybe 8 minutes left here. Did you want to hear about what I'm kind of working on near term?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So one of the things that is coming rapidly is undo redo. We are still sorting through exactly to what level that undoes and redoes things, as well as how to communicate what is being undone and redone. So that is in the works, being actively worked on. Other things that are probably like pretty imminent, like beta this summer kind of stuff. The JSON expand tile is one of those. The ability to convert to SQL for any of the magic tiles. So like you configure something in a magic tile and you can just say convert to SQL and it makes it into a SQL tile for you. Nice. So you can continue editing it there. There are some UI improvements that we have kicked off some redesign efforts on, specifically around canvas size and navigation. You should see an interim increase in canvas size soon because that's something we can do quickly. But basically, before we give you an unlimited canvas, we want to rethink our navigation and not rely on scroll bars so much. Kind of do more of like a Google Maps style navigation. Also, I know everybody wants the ability to box or containerize tiles. That is very top of mind for me. That is something that we are starting to work on design for. And then things like the ability to comment out or disable tiles, but leave them in place. The ability to write rich text on canvas, like those types of organizational things are things that we're working on in kind of the near term.
That's super cool.
Yeah. Oh, and also I want to mention the field search capability. So the ability to search for a column name and see where in the data flow in the canvas that column is available.
Do you have plans to like be able to color code? This sounds so dumb as I say it out loud, but I'm just like, wouldn't it be cool if I could apply colors to my tiles? Because to your point about undo redo, if kind of like in GitHub, like, or VS Code, I guess, anything that's been modified turns red, everything that stays the same is like green or whatever, or vice versa, right? Those kinds of hints would help us be able to quickly see undo redo. But no, what I really struggled with just the other day, I know, I wrote an ETL, first time in my life. But I did a join and I wanted to know how many rows came out of that ETL, and I looked at the history, and history shows me how many rows are processed, but processed is not the same as how many came out. Because my concern was if I had a Cartesian product. So I think little moments like that, same with the filter tile, right? Like how many rows came out versus processed stuff.
Yeah, so that's actually part of the near-term roadmap too is the ability to basically have multiple outputs from a single tile. So this affects your quality of life for join tiles, filter tiles, even like the Python tile, being able to have multiple outputs from the Python tile.
Yes.
And so it would give you the ability to have the filter results and the inverse filter results, the
Right.
join results, the inverse join results. So that's kind of like step one in my mind. Step two is giving you those counts, like the ability to see the numbers of tiles, maybe even upgrade the graph UI to show like a heat map of processing time that each of the tiles took, or something like that. So I have a lot of things in mind there.
That's really cool. We've only got you for 3 minutes. I wanted to open up the floor. Does anybody have any questions or things that they wanted to bring to the table, get answered? With what little bit of time we have left from Andrea. Amazing. Everyone's like, I know everything.
I think she covered so much of what we're concerned about, and she's our hero. Anybody disagree?
Nice. Well, Bob says looking. So I guess, Andrea, what are the chances of getting these betas? Are these betas in Domo community? I don't know if Eddie's still here. Eddie, do you know?
I don't think they are, but I'm happy to put them in there. Obviously, Domo community is not where you're doing your production work, so that's my only concern about giving anybody a beta ever is that they will have a problem with something that is important to their business.
For sure, for sure. Well, we all know better than to put production data in community, right, guys?
We'll definitely have to double check that. There are a number of conversations happening.
Okay.
With that
Sorry,
instance, so, no worries. I'll bring you up to speed a little bit later, but if it's something that we can do, we will definitely do it. Obviously sharing capabilities will become so important once we start rolling that kind of stuff out. So thank you guys so much for your patience, but we'll get you what you need. I just need to double check a few things.
In your individual.
You want to hop on with us on Friday?
What's that, Alexis?
You want to hop on with us on Friday with updates?
Yeah, I might be able to. We have been dealing with some other community forum issues, so as long as I can button those up by the end of the week, be happy to jump on Friday to walk you through some things.
I guess, Andrea, kind of my last question for you is, when you think about like this, the suite of ETL, right? You know, hopefully MySQL and Redshift never go away. There's probably a place for all of them, but specifically Adrenaline data flows. Where do you think that fits now that more and more functionality is getting rolled into Magic?
I mean, Adrenaline data flows has always had a pretty narrow and powerful use case, and that is cases in which you are doing massive data reduction and you need heavy compute on large data sets that you need to do aggregates or like massive filtering on. So I do not see that going anywhere. I don't think that we are going to put the same things under the hood of MagicETL as we have under the hood of Adrenaline data flows. Mainly, I think that there will always be that data movement in order to load the data into the MagicETL environment, whereas Adrenaline just kind of expands to process where it is and then writes out. So I think Adrenaline will always be useful in those cases where you're like, I have 6 billion rows, I need a summary in 10 minutes or whatever. Like, I think Adrenaline will always fit there. I think people overuse Adrenaline out of frustration with the other SQL performance. And what I'm hoping is that some of that undesired behavior of using SQL or using Adrenaline data flows to kind of like brute force in use cases where it's not necessarily the best tool. I'm hoping that will go away as SQL is available in Magic.
That's interesting. So, and just again for everyone on the call, like Adrenaline data flows, you're saying that the use case for that is like large data sets. When you say large data sets, how large are we talking? Like, what's my lower limit of when I should use Adrenaline ever?
I don't know that there's necessarily a lower limit.
Yeah, but make one up. Make one up.
I start thinking about it when I'm getting to the billion row mark.
Okay, so if you're less than 1 billion rows, just use magic is what I'm choosing.
I
to
would
use.
try it. I would definitely attempt magic at, depending on what you're doing, around that mark. And I would but it's really the use case that I would be thinking of if I was doing like exception detection. Like I knew I had this list of users that I needed out of this 4 billion row data set. That filtering can happen in adrenaline data flow very efficiently, whereas you're never getting that out of magic.
And I think this again might be a place, folks, where it might be useful to understand like what kind of transforms are that magic is really good at, and the types of transforms where having a true database engine might make more sense. And I hinted at it earlier, but things like a join, things like a group by, things like a rank and window function, they kind of, a database engine like Adrenaline or Redshift or MySQL will arguably always be faster than magic. It's just the time it takes to kind of spin up. And so I think those kind of hints might help you choose the right tool for the job at the time. But it's really exciting to hear that more SQL functionality is being brought into magic.
Awesome.
Yeah. Hey, Andrea, thank you so much for joining. I mean, you're just, it feels like having somebody who's been through the hell. it just feels like, we have product managers leading parts of Domo that are like, oh yeah, I've worked with this tool a lot. I know how painful it is. And, we were talking about at Domopalooza, you're like, and my goal is to get some of these like things just picked off. There's no reason why we shouldn't have a undo button, for example. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jay.
Cheers. All right. Catch you later. Rest of guys, here to hang out and talk about all of the things you heard, or if we're kind of like, all right, I'm good, I got my fill today. It's kind of up to you where we take the next little bit of time we've got together. Dead silence. Okay, well, I guess from my side, I don't really have anything that I'm dying to share with you guys. So when will these be out of beta, Courtney asks. I think that's one of those questions that we can't really ask Domo. And just to put some framing around it, I never want to put anyone who comes onto this call in a position where we're like, you got to talk about roadmap, because that's really not what this is about. I think it's to kind of get an idea of the things. You heard Andrea, she was saying, stuff is in the near future. We have stuff that's more and more available. I would prefer it if we didn't ask that question. But I always ask the hard questions. I mean, yeah, but not that one. Specifically not that one. If the PM chooses to volunteer that, I think that's one thing. But that's certainly not something I would put someone on the spot for in a call. Other questions, thoughts, comments? I think all of you guys know who I am or found out about me either through Slack or LinkedIn. So, happy to keep this conversation going in the Slack channel. There is a group for the beta program, if you're part of it, to kind of discuss these things. Obviously, as you're having feedback, guys, and I'm terrible at this, so like I should, eat my own dog food. We should definitely make sure that we're putting these things into the Dojo community ideas exchange so that it's just getting Domo community idea exchange. So it's getting that visibility in the right place. And, let's build some hype about it in Slack, but let's make sure feedback goes in the right places.
Yeah, Jay, I'm still lurking. I want to really emphasize that. I know that sometimes in the past people have felt like their ideas are going into a black hole. I am in the idea exchange constantly. I hope you have seen me responding. I have ways that I'm tracking everything that I'm talking to you about. And I am already reading things in the idea exchange are influencing my roadmap. So please put things there.
Plus 10. Yeah. And then guys, go through and upvote. Maybe we should just every day just be like, all right, guys, go into Slack, go into community, upvote shit. But yeah. Sweet. Well, things are dying down. I'm not going to pull it out any longer. I think the next session that I tentatively wanted to do is on the 7th. It's not confirmed yet, but I want to do a session on App Studio and some of the new features in App Studio and how they integrate, maybe how they integrate into workflows, which is a session we did last week. But find me in Slack. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Let me know what worked. Let me know what needs to change, and take it from there. Thanks, everyone. Catch you guys later.